Since his introduction in Yakuza Like a Dragon, Ichiban and Kiryu have walked almost the exact same path in completely different ways. On paper, you would think players who at one time would have appreciated playing a godly powerful, confidently quiet, cigarette-smoking orphan and borderline sociopath who drinks expensive whiskey, gets in highway shootouts, and has the crippling addiction to corn and hostess clubs to fill the part of the hole in his heart that bowling can't, from the loss of the only woman he's ever loved, who adopts her child as a way of atonement for his own failure to save her life. And she's 5, I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Let her run off into the night? Those same players watch that character grow and change in such a gritty, raw environment. Time after time, going to the highest heights and even down to hell and back if it means protecting the people he loves. And as time passed and players watched the world change around them, they watched as time passed in his world, feeling the weight of the consequences of his actions and the effect they had on his environment, coupled with changes that, in sometimes frighteningly and often hilarious ways, mimic the changes players see in their world. You would think they'd enjoy playing as a newer, fresher version of that character, just as loyal, twice as loyal, and half as gruff, as not to offend the children that are likely to be in the room as they play the game, considering the first game dropped 20 years ago. But a lot of those players don't like Ichiban, and I don't think it's because he's soft or too cheerful. The issues Ichiban has stem from a cognitive dissonance in his narrative that hasn't been addressed.
You dropped out of school, committed multiple offenses of shoplifting and assaults, then finally joined the Yakuza at age 16. Oh, you had a largely unremarkable career as a member of the Tojo clan's Arakawa family, well, till the night you killed an officer higher up on the food chain. Then, January 1st, 2001, you turned yourself in at Kamaro Police Station. Then, you were sentenced to 15 years at this prison. After getting an extra 3 years tacked on for bad behavior, we finally arrive at today, where you were just released about 3.5 minutes ago. That about sum it up.
Wow, you're my biggest fan for sure. You want an autograph to show your DMV friends?
The point is, I don't really have too much to offer. But when it comes to you, I give everything I have just to make you happy.
You're a fucking idiot.
So,
This needs to stop.
let me ask you.
Now.
Will you, Snoop Dogg? Will you?
But first you have to like the video. You already made it this far, so I mean, then if you get what I'm saying, subscribe and keep watching. To prove my point, let's look at Kiryu and Kaoru. Oh, that's cute. They're literally meant for each other. And let's look at Ichiban and Saiko. Despite one being absent for several years now, both of these women are the main love interest for our protagonist. We'll talk more about their differences, but first, let's talk about how similar they really are. Both of them stand at authoritative heights. They aren't necessarily tall, but they're tall enough, you know? Both of them have short hair, and both of them hold massive amounts of power for anyone. Kaoru, when we meet her, is already a high-level Tokyo detective.
その社長に会った時、テーブルを叩いたそうやないか。
叩いたうちに入れまへんがな。ちょっとこうやってポーンとやっただけですわ。
立派な恐喝罪や。
はっ、冗談やないで。そないなことでいちいち引っ張られとったらわしら飯食うていきまへんがな。
しょうもない大門ちらつかせられれば、一般市民はそれだけで怯えるもんや。
しょうもない大門やと。女やと思っておとなしいしとったら図に乗りやがって。
何が人気や。
何さらすんや。
A real one, not you. Get out of here. We'll get to you Thursday. She goes on to be an FBI agent working internationally, which is how we fall out of touch. But anyway, Saiko is the mama of a hostess club. Now, if you've never played Yakuza 0 or are otherwise unfamiliar with the gravity of that sentence, understand that you would rather be an FBI agent. Unless you're like one of those guys that infiltrates civilian organizations and attempt to start trouble, they'll probably be worse, you know, just more taxing morally. Despite having different careers, Saiko and Kaoru have no reason to give our heroes the time of day. We are broke, violent, gangsters, and felons. At the very least, we are liabilities. Kiryu understands this. Ichiban, for whatever reason, does not seem to get it. When Kiryu refuses to allow Date to mention him, even after hearing everything Kaoru has given up just in the hopes she might be helping his goals, it's frustrating, but I buy it. When I said this was a narrative issue in the other video, that's more of a Daidoji issue, because he had already shown himself and defied the Daidoji, yada yada yada. But when you return to Yokohama after this cutscene, Kiryu is more honest about why he wouldn't let Date tell her.
俺は思ったよりも過方者だったらしい。
まったくだ、この色男が。狭山には本当に伝えなくてよかったのか？
ああ、何にせよ。あいつが警察官としての夢を追う以上、俺はいない方がいい。
東上界4代目の辛いところか。けどよ、桐生。何度でも言うぜ。お前はもっと自分勝手に生きていい。惚れた女ならがむしゃらにしがみついていいんだ。見てるこっちがやきもきしやがる。
離婚経験者の言うことは説得力が違うな。
お前、そういうことを言うか？
And that makes a lot more sense. It's the reason he's not even allowed to show himself in the first place and speaks to the core of what makes Kiryu, Kiryu. He doesn't just put others first, he throws himself at the opportunity to put others first. He's like a greedy sub at an orgy, just pushing people out of the way in an effort to receive maximum punishment. If you said he just did not value his own life, I wouldn't want to argue with you. But if you said the same thing about Ichiban, I wouldn't have to. You'd be wrong. But let's say you did, and I'll tell you why. I'll even give you a handicap, and I won't mention his childlike joyfulness.
After I got out of prison, the first time I saw you was in a picture. I knew it was you right away. There was no mistaking it. I'd recognize your face anywhere. Because I care about you too.
Are you lecturing me again about how important family is?
No! It's not a lecture! Did you ever stop to think why Arakawa-san, Captain Sawashiro and I never gave up on you? No matter how much bad shit you dragged us into! Let me tell you. It wasn't easy. But we did it anyway, because we're all connected, deep inside our hearts!
Ichiban's willingness to fight for the people he loves doesn't stem from a desire to take a ride on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Express. He's just a really helpful guy. Honestly, when something is happening, he jumps at the chance to get involved. This over-eager, save-the-world attitude might explain why he gave all his money and power away. Didn't skip on that condo though, that motherfucker is huge. That aside, Ichi spends his life running towards his goals and never backs down when things get tough. Kiryu, on the other hand, follows the same trajectory until 3, where he begins to run away from his problems, wait for them to find him, complain about not wanting to be involved, and then throwing himself in front of a bullet or two by the end of it. If inaction is a choice, Kiryu will take it. Ichiban didn't stop long enough to notice there was a choice.
Once you go through that door, there's no turning back. Ichi, are you sure you're ready for that? 18 years. I've been waiting to open this goddamn door for 18 years. That's long enough!
So when Ichiban crumbles and fumbles Psycho, the idea that he'd still be scared to talk to her after a year is simply ridiculous. Though it would be out of character for him to go full Spider-Man 3, dipping his toes into the Venom pool would be much more consistent. He doesn't have to be an asshole, he just needs to move on. Infinite Wealth could have been Eat, Pray, Love for the boys. Think about it. Instead, we're forced to run away from our problems in a Kiryu-esque fashion without any of the Sigma male energy to do it effectively. I made Kiryu sound like a baby a minute ago just to make this point. Kiryu is fucking cool. Put loyalty and his love for Haruka and the MGKs, the Morning Glory kids, and even Daigo for that matter aside. If none of that existed, he'd still be the Dragon of Dojima. Ichiban says himself that he'd be nothing without his friends.
Him. You can't just take away my friend.
Friend? Didn't you hear a word he just said? He's been lying to you because he thought it would get him closer to us. You call that a friend? I can think of a few better words to describe him.
Yeah, good point. Friend isn't exactly the right word for Namba anymore. It's different now.
So it's sinking in?
The thing is, the only reason I say that is because friend doesn't even begin to describe him.
What do you mean?
He took care of me when I got dumped here. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have survived the night. I owe my life to Namba, and that's a debt I can never repay him for. That guy back there is more than a friend. The only thing I would call him now is a brother!
So how can he be content to leave them behind to focus on his work? I think the narrative dissonance caused by the whiplash of Ichiban's characterization between Y7 and Y8 is what sits at the core of people's distaste for Ichiban. And yes, it's just one example, but keep in mind, Ichiban's love plot is center stage in this game. It takes up a good portion of your first few hours and is an integral part of the endgame. If they made Kaoru a main character in the story similar to how Psycho is, and Kiryu swoops in suave and cool, scoops her up in his arms, it'd be an even bigger issue. Why? Half the reason he's there is to pay tribute to Yumi. You know, the only woman he ever loved. That inconsistency in character that we would feel immediately with Kiryu is exactly what is on display with Ichiban. If I'm cracked, let me know. If I'm not, subscribe. If you haven't liked the video at this point, I don't know, man, but you're a champ for watching it all, or you're asleep. In which case, bye.